INEFFA is our first character from Nod-Krai, and as such, she's really quick at introducing something new. Lunar-Charged, a modified version of Electro-Charged. In this video, I will explain her kit, where and how she works, and share some calculations I made to guide your build choices. I'll also introduce a very simple tool where you can punch your own stats to see how Lunar-Charged damage changes, hopefully helping you understanding this new reaction better. This character can be very interesting, so let's see what we got. Firstly, I need to point out that there are a few things in her kit that are hidden, in two places. The new reaction passive has a line that says, "Further blessings may follow the new moon's rise," extremely sus if you have been keeping up with the lore, and could be relevant in the future. Then her exploration passive says that in Nod-Krai some of her kit is able to change appearance. We will see, I guess, but let's cover what we have for now. She is an electro-polar user, and until we look at the new reaction, I would say she's extremely simple to understand. She is Fischl with a shield. Not joking, she is literally Fischl or Emily. Skill summons Birgitta, which will attack every 2 seconds. Burst does some decent damage and resummons Birgitta with a new duration and position. The summon teleports around, has some AoE and a 20 seconds duration, so it's very handy in combat. The skill is where we get a shield, 16 seconds of cooldown, but 20 seconds of duration like your summon. This will easily cover above 10k damage at talent level 9 with some average attack stat. Yes, this is another attack scaling shield, which will be great for her builds. Really, INEFFA is the most simple character to understand, until you look at her passive talents and the new reaction. So let's cover those. Lunar-Charged and Electro-Charged are not the same. For instance, how the damage is calculated and the frequency of it is different. Lunar-Charged will hit at most every 2 seconds. Electro-Charged generally hits once per second instead. Then the damage formula also slightly differs. Reactions like Electro-Charged have a base damage given by your level, and then they get multiplied by elemental mastery and resistance. And for the most part, it is the same for Lunar-Charged, but there is a new multiplier in town, and that's crit value. This reaction can crit. And secondly, it also takes into account the damage of every participant to the reaction, and makes them all contribute. Let me explain. The character with the highest reaction damage that participates with either Hydro or Electro in the reaction will be the main factor of the final damage you're getting. Other characters that participated by applying either of the two elements are also taken into account. This is how the damage is split. Full damage for the unit that deals the most, 50% from the second unit with the most damage, and about 8% for the last 1 or 2 units that deal the least amount of damage. So if one character deals electro damage and then right after someone deals hydro damage, the character that would deal the highest Lunar-Charged damage will see 100% of their stats contribute to the reaction. The other one will add to Lunar-Charged damage, but their contribution is cut in half. So again, you're not losing anything here, but adding to the character with the most stats. This pretty much guarantees that even if only one character is built decently, their damage will fully improve Lunar-Charged damage. The second character will still contribute a lot, while the third and fourth character almost don't matter. We're not done yet because INEFFA has a few passives that improve this further. First off, 6% of INEFFA's attack becomes Elemental Mastery for her and whoever is currently on field. This happens on burst cast. With 2000 attack, it's a 120 Elemental Mastery boost. However, it doesn't have a cap, so it can go further and help INEFFA herself and anyone on field. Secondly, the passive that enables Electro-Charged to become Lunar-Charged increases its base damage by 0.7% per 100 attack she has. For this passive, you really want to have 2000 attack, that's where it caps out and where you want to be at least, for 14% extra base damage to any Lunar-Charged. Just replacing Lunar-Charged with Electro-Charged wouldn't be enough, and she would be a pretty mediocre character. But best for last, this is her strongest passive. It makes Birgitta unleash extra attacks when Lunar-Charged is triggered. These extra attacks are a 65% attack multiplier that is considered Lunar-Charged damage, which means that this instance of damage ignores defense, and they also added a 3x multiplier to it. This is very good. It's basically a forced extra instance of reaction damage that not only uses Elemental Mastery and crit like other Lunar-Charged reactions, but it also multiplies by INEFFA's attack directly. I'm going to refer to this passive as direct Lunar-Charged damage from now on. And this passive is the bulk of her damage. I calculated it to be basically half her overall presence. And to make things more interactive and even easier to understand, I made a super simple calculator you can use to see how Lunar-Charged damage changes depending on your stats. It will be in the description. You can make a copy, adjust only the yellow cells, and it will be super easy to use. I made this in a way that you can calculate the damage of a second Lunar-Charged trigger, but honestly don't trust it too much if their stats are close to INEFFA. What can happen in game is that what you assume is a second trigger might actually be the primary one when they crit and INEFFA doesn't. But for INEFFA's own damage and direct Lunar-Charged hits, it's going to be pretty accurate. Let's now do a recap. Lunar-Charged reactions will take into consideration everyone that participates by applying Hydro or Electro. The stronger they are, the more they contribute to its total damage. INEFFA will also buff the reaction with her attack and buff herself and whoever is on field with Elemental Mastery, also based on her attack. Additionally, she also forces out more Lunar-Charged damage directly, which actually deals much more damage than the reaction itself. Remember that Lunar-Charged can crit, but the key thing to notice is that electro damage on INEFFA or damage percentage in general do not contribute to neither the reaction damage nor direct Lunar-Charged instances. This is very important for her builds. Technically, her burst and skill multipliers do use damage percentage, but those represent less than 20% of her overall damage. So to make it simple, she doesn't build electro damage, or cares about damage percentage buffs that much. This is not to be confused with reaction damage, something you find in her weapon and now even on Thundering Fury. Those obviously work. In the damage formula, they are basically treated as having extra elemental mastery. Because of all of this, we need to talk about talents and builds. For talents, as I said earlier, her multipliers do not actually contribute a lot to her overall damage. But let's not forget she is also a shielder. So skill levels will be your top priority, followed by burst and leaving the attack talent at level 1. Honestly, it's more important that you bring her to level 90 before investing into higher talent levels. And for builds, we have a character that cares about 3 things: attack, elemental mastery, and crit value. Crit will generally be the most valuable stat as it increases any source of damage she has, so talent multipliers, reaction damage, and direct Lunar-Charged damage. Generally your top priority as a substat and as a main stat on the circlet. After that, elemental mastery and attack are your best bet. But I want to remind you that it's important to at least get the first 2000 attack, and that upon burst cast you also get a small attack to elemental mastery conversion. Not just to INEFFA, but also to whoever is on field, which can be pretty handy. While calculating your best weapons, stats and builds, I also checked the difference between these two, and let me tell you that technically elemental mastery and attack can be very close to each other, but generally attack has the edge, even past 2000. The first few hundreds of elemental mastery are the one that give you the most, as you can see by this chart, but stacking it is not the way for Lunar-Charged. So I generally prioritize attack, but you still be happy with extra elemental mastery. Also, since the attack to elemental mastery conversion is connected to the burst, it means you also need energy recharge. Values of energy recharge will change a lot depending on the team and depending on the amount of Favonius weapons and electro units. In the best scenario, with a Fav and another electro, you might even not need energy recharge at all, but in the worst case scenario, not even an energy recharge sense might save you. And you generally don't want to skip the burst. A 3000 attack in INEFFA is literally giving herself and whoever is on field a main stat worth of elemental mastery. So, generally attack on sense and goblet, and crit circlet. Alternatively, energy recharge and elemental mastery sense or elemental mastery goblet can function as well. But when looking at 2-piece and 4-piece bonuses currently in the game, we actually don't see many options. The most INEFFA set is Gilded Dreams, but it's honestly not that strong, especially compared to today's standards. I expect Nod-Krai to probably have a real best artifact set. But for now, Gilded offers you elemental mastery and attack. 2-piece plus 2-piece sets will also be a good option, and otherwise, what you can use is Tenacity to buff everyone's attack and increase the strength of her shield, or Thundering Fury. This is getting updated to include the Lunar-Charged, but unfortunately it's still not that strong. We do like the extra damage, but the skill refresh is not really something we need, and the 2-piece bonus, as we explained earlier, does not increase our Lunar-Charged damage. This also means that we can't really consider a set like Golden Troop. Now let's look at the weapon chart. A lot can change in our teams, so the ranking can shift depending on the energy research required, external attack or elemental mastery buffs. As we will find out later, INEFFA can join quite the number of teams, as her only real requirement is having someone that applies Hydro. Her signature weapon, Fractured Halo, offers crit damage, attack and reaction damage, and this last buff is not just to INEFFA, but to the entire team. We cannot be 100% sure Nod-Krai is not going to release more characters that directly produce Lunar-Charged, or simply contribute really hard to it, like a new Hydro or Electron Fielder with EM multipliers or crazy crit stats. But regardless, there are plenty of other options, and they can either cover your energy requirements or even give you some meaningful buff. Of course, the crit stat sticks are going to be your best bet, but in dire need of energy, and especially in Stygian, Favonius and Keatain are fantastic options. Keatain especially is not done justice here, as I set the energy requirement at 130, but technically its passive can even be activated twice per rotation, and with higher energy requirements, this can be the best options on many accounts, and generally one of the best free-to-play options. Honestly, there's no need to go through all of them, but remember that Primordial and Vortex won't get many stacks unless you stay on field, and Missive Wind Spear's effect can only be activated on field, which doesn't mean it's bad, but if you want it up constantly, you might need to switch back to her at least once per rotation. That's why there are 2 in the Calcs. Now you guys know I'm not a Constellation gamer, but very briefly, for the first 2, C1 gives a 20 seconds buff that increases Lunar-Charged damage by up to 50%, C2 is a co-op shield on burst cast, as Oyo likes to do for shielders, that also triggers an extra direct Lunar-Charged instance, but instead of 65% of her attack, we get 300%. This is pretty big, but happens once. And we can finally head over to the team section of this video. INEFFA is offering 3 things: an elemental mastery buff, a strong shield, and a sizable amount of damage. All she's asking in return is that you apply Hydro constantly, so that both Lunar-Charged and her direct reaction triggers keep happening. And for that, Hydro on fielders and off fielders are going to be the first thing you consider in your teams. As of fielders, the usual trio of Furina, Xingqiu and Yelan are just awesome, and at least one of them is going to be in pretty much 90% of INEFFA's teams. If you think about it, when considering an on-fielder instead, we either have a couple of very old units that still get an upgrade out of INEFFA, or otherwise it's pretty much just Novilette. So let's talk about this team first. Novilette, Furina, INEFFA, plus someone that is able to ideally shred resistance and or heal are going to rank very high among Novilette teams. And one key aspect here is resistance shred, and I guess I haven't really talked about it so far. In this team, the damage coming from every single source is influenced by the resistance of the enemy. Not only their personal damage, but also both the Lunar-Charged and direct Lunar-Charged hits. So generally the priority will be an Anemo unit because of VV or Shilonen. Depending on how many rotations you're doing and how well you're able to keep up Furina's fanfare, then Shilonen is not strictly better. Yes, she heals, but Cinder City set is a bit awkward to play around. Crystal Lights over an Electro-Charged Aura actually prioritizes Electro over Hydro. On the first rotation, this will be easily fixed by going to INEFFA after Shilonen, but in multiple rotations it will be hard to keep Cinder City up for the Hydro slots. And honestly, we really don't need the Electro damage buff. INEFFA doesn't care about it too much. Of course, Lunar-Charged teams don't stop at Novilette, and any usual Taser team can very simply benefit from INEFFA, especially considering Anemo drivers like Sucrose or even IFA. Another consideration can be Chaska. INEFFA just sounds like a great teammate for her. Add Furina and Bennett and it low-key sounds like one of the best teams you can make. We are giving Chaska 3 great elements, both Hydro and Electro constantly on the enemy, which means every pyro hit not gated by Eternal Cooldown will both vaporize and overload. And any Electro or Hydro without ICD will not do as much but still contribute to Lunar-Charged damage. It all sounds great, but I want to talk about something here. People will consider VV on Chaska, and I'm not sold on this at all. It might sound like a good idea, since it increases everyone's damage, including reactions and her own, but I just want to point out that if your Chaska is really good, this is likely not ideal. Most Calcs you see online do not obviously account for your own build, and they also stop at talent level 9 for every character. which is something you shouldn't do on a character like Chaska, at least on the skill. Then consider that you might not have the greatest crit values and attack stats on a VV set, and you'll be stuck playing something very subpar. So, while yeah, it depends on investment, I think most players with Chaska will stick to Codex, and definitely do not consider Cinder City. This same concept of pyro hits triggering Vaporites and Overload works on Chaska, but obviously it also works on most pyro units. Overvape is a kind of a team that has been very successful throughout the years. Arlecchino, Yoimiya, Hutao, Shanling and similar characters often do like the access to both reactions. INEFFA just needs one consistent source of Hydro and she just works, so she will also find herself in these teams. Another archetype that might be considered is including a Dendro unit. This however is either a unit that applies very sporadic Dendro to not interrupt Lunar-Charged from happening, or instead is a Dendro unit that is placed in a team with so much Hydro that the problem is not present at all. The result is INEFFA keeping her reactions but also gaining Hyper Bloom. Honestly, I think these teams will need very precise units to really turn out well, but hey, maybe Lunar Hyper Bloom will make it very strong. And lastly, I want to say that we really don't know what Nod-Krai has to offer. You guys know that I don't cover leaks, but I think it's very likely that we will see a better artifact set for INEFFA. And maybe not just that, we might also see better teammates. Maybe crazy on-fielders that would carry the reaction harder, or maybe a simple lunar reaction buffer. I would really expect Nod-Krai to eventually have someone that just says, lunar reactions do X more damage. But don't get me wrong, she's already a very good character, I just doubt she won't get at least a bit better in the future. Especially considering the pretty limited roster of Hydro units that work well with her. Anyway, this was all from me. Remember to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos, it really helps me out. In the following days I will also share more findings, calculations and infographics here on YouTube and on my Discord. I actually recently opened a theory crafting channel you guys can use. Shout out to all the YouTube, Twitch and Patreon members for the extra support. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.